Render has quickly become one of the largest projects in this space, and I do believe everyone should have a little bit of it in their portfolio for the long-term future ahead. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about that. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. If we take a quick look at Render, you might be saying, all right, well, Nick, this thing is already at a fully diluted market cap of 3.3 billion. It's already up 300 and almost like 4% on the 1 year. What's the whole point of me buying Render now? The upside potential is limited. And you might say, yeah, sure, that's, accurate. But I'm more so looking at this thing as a blue chip long term. Nvidia has become one of the largest stocks out there, and it is because of their GPUs, what they offer, their tech. But I look at some of the projects in the space like what Render is doing, and I believe that Render could also become one of the largest projects in the space because of the tech behind it. For those that don't actually know what the Render network is, it's offering a DPIN-like solution through its decentralized GPU rendering platform. And it is already working with some of the largest players out there. And I've talked about this in the past in my Patreon and in the Discord. Here you guys have a screenshot from April of 2023. This is actually from my Patreon where I was talking about Render. Render was one of the biggest projects that I was telling people to buy back in 2023. And it was around like $1.60 at the time that I posted this. But I said in 5 to 10 years, I could see it being worth well over $500 billion to $1 trillion in market cap. And to a lot of people, that might sound crazy. But when we really look at what Render is doing and the players that they're working with already, it doesn't seem that crazy to me. Now we're going to talk about that, but first I want to address the overall chart. So this is the chart for Render after taking out a massive liquidity wick. We're talking about back in the beginning of August. It took out this liquidity wick going all the way back here to December of 2021. Now, what I'm really kind of watching for is 3 key levels for Render to actually break. The first one is sitting at about roughly $6.26, which we are over right now. The next after that is about $7 and almost 28 cents. And then after that, we're looking at $10 plus, sitting at about $11 and almost 82 cents, which will probably put us on the path to breaking the all-time high that Render did have back in March, sitting at about almost $14. And that should set us on a path to $20 plus, ultimately hitting my goal of about $50 on Render. But outside of just the chart, because the chart does look good here for a strong reversal, we're seeing, a few higher highs being printed here, or higher lows, sorry. What we're looking for is higher highs. For an example, here you guys have, a nice low, followed by a higher low, followed by another higher low. And now we're waiting for this high to be broken to put in a higher high. That's why I'm looking at these 3 key targets, because it would start to have a bullish formation formed on this chart. And that would actually lead us to having a very, very bullish structure to help propel us above, $20 plus, hitting ultimately $50, which is my end goal. Now, outside of like the chart, like I said, over here, when we look at the dashboard, we could see the total frames rendered over 37 million, almost sitting at 38 million. And also the latest burn. Guys, Render is being burned. 17,000 Render almost burned. Again, the supply, 532 million. The total supply, current circulating supply, sitting at about roughly 517.4 million. And yes, there is a token unlock, but guys, the token unlock is not significant at all. If we actually look at this, by January 1st of 2031, there is going to be a inflation of Render sitting at about roughly 38.56 million. But if Render starts to become very, very active, we're talking about major adoption for the Render network, this amount of Render burned would significantly increase. Render is deflationary, and this is very significant to focus on. For an example, here we have the cumulative burned to date, 133,445 Render. We have the total nodes since inception as well, circulating supply, max supply. Again, like I said, as we really kind of look at the amount burned, we are going to see this increase with the increased use of the network, which if we really kind of look at, some of the players that is, utilizing Render technology or their integrations, it is very significant, which we will get to here in a bit. But here we have the emission schedule. Again, this is dropping off significantly. You can see the initial emission splits as well. They have all of this outlined, very transparent. We also have the emissions versus burns. Again, this is not significant just yet, but over time, as we do start to see more use of the network, this is going to quickly outpace the emissions. And here we have the burn accumulated. Again, just recently, this started to heavily increase, and this is because of use. They also have the burns down here outlined. Here's the burns per epoch, and then here are the burns to date and the amount. Again, you can see the signers, signatures, all that kind of stuff. Very transparent. Now, outside of this, let's talk about how big Render is becoming and why Render is pumping, because in the last 7 days, it is up 30.5%. This is because Render has quickly become one of the largest projects on Solana. For those that don't know, yes, they have started to migrate over to Solana. We have here breaking Render Network reveals at Solana conference that 60% of its circulating supply, worth about $2 billion, has moved from Ethereum to Solana, making it the largest project on Solana. New BME models, including all the developments, are now fully on Solana. So love to see this. And here we have the chart over here as well. Solana's DPIN is growing rapidly. Render Network leads with a $2.7 billion market cap, followed by Helium at $1.2 billion. Let's review the top 10 projects by market cap. And again, when you look at Render, it has quickly become one of the largest projects on Solana, which is also putting a lot of eyes on Render. But Render has always had a ton of eyes on it. If you actually look at, the Render Network on X, almost 200,000 followers. They have become one of the largest projects in the space, like I said. Now, if we go over here, a lot of major artists, even studios, networks, they're using Render through some of their integrations, but this is actually a VFX artist, and it's on YouTube. 2 million views, and this is through Render Network. It actually slashed render times from 13 hours to just 30 minutes. Guys, the art scene is being heavily disrupted by these decentralized GPU rendering platforms, and what Render is solving here is such a big deal. Guys, movies, TV shows, to have some of the artwork rendered in those movies and stuff, it takes hours, days, even weeks sometimes. So if we're talking about something like Render Network solving a lot of these problems by, slashing times from 13 hours into 30 minutes, just imagine how disruptive this would be in movies, TV shows, things like that. Now, if we go over here, we could actually see how Render, the token, is being utilized by the network. So the Render Network is powered by a decentralized community. The Render Network is shaped by its decentralized ecosystem of artists, node operators, developers, and render holders. Through the Render Network governance process, anyone can help define the future of decentralized GPU computing. Now, they do break down how Render is used, which we will get to here in 1 second. But I also want to talk a little bit more about some of the players using the Render Network. For an example, here we have one of the artists over here using Render. You could see some of his work here. So he worked on Fallout. He worked on some films. I mean, this is definitely a big player in the artwork scene around films, around games. Guys, when we really think about what's happening here, Render is now being heavily utilized within the traditional world. It's one of the very few AI decentralized GPU platforms that are actually being utilized. A lot of these AI projects that are in this space, or even DPIN projects that are in this space, they're not actually being used. It's all hype. It's all nonsense. But Render is actually being used. So when we really think about this and we look at how Render, the token, is actually utilized, here we have it. So Render itself is utilized for fee payments on the network and also payouts to GPU power providers. And it is also distributed as rewards for liquidity providers. Creators currently have the option to pay in Render tokens or fiat currency to access processing capacity on the network. Node operators are reimbursed in Render for renting out their machine's hardware capacity. Finally, liquidity providers are rewarded with an additional percentage of Render for contributing staked Render to liquidity pools on partnered exchanges as well. Now, yes, the governance is another major thing. Holders of the token can take part in the voting process, which is why I said, when we really look at Render going from, Ethereum over to Solana, that was because of the holders actually voting for it. And then burn and mint equilibrium. that is the BME. In order to keep the cost of rendering and AI jobs predictable and stable for creators, Render Network has introduced a burn and mint equilibrium system for the render token to determine price via a supply and demand equilibrium. Under it, creators pay for their jobs by converting fiat currency to render using a number of distributed liquidity pools. Naturally, this conversion could lead to an uncontrolled increase in render supply as the jobs are paid for. To avoid this, additional render is used to pay for processing jobs, and they're burned. So as we really kind of look at this, again, the utility around render is still very significant. The entire platform is reliant on render, and there is a burn and mint system in place, which is also making render technically, by the effect of, increased use, and if it is massively adopted, it will make render deflationary. Now, if we go over here, we can see Octane X was featured in today's Apple keynote. This is what I mean by mass adoption of this type of technology. Apple users can augment the massive increase in rendering power on the M4 with access to near unlimited high-performance decentralized GPU compute power on the Render Network using Octane X. And this is the full breakdown of this. We have 50% faster CPU performance than M2. And here we have the actual video.
In the previous iPad Pro, the next generation 10-core GPU architecture includes powerful features like dynamic caching and brings hardware-accelerated mesh shading and ray tracing to iPad for the first time. So games like Diablo Immortal look fantastic, and pro rendering apps like Octane will flat out fly, with up to 4 times faster performance than M2.
Now, for those that actually don't know why this is very important, it's because Octane X has implemented render within it, so you can utilize render through Octane X. So this has allowed a lot of people to speculate, all right, well, render concerned the fact of how efficient it is for rendering, for use cases around it. This is going to have, a major impulse for users to actually utilize Octane X with render with Apple. So Apple users will now be able to utilize Octane X with render. Now, we don't know how significant this is going to be with, use and with adoption, but it definitely could expose render to major amounts of users, those utilizing Octane X, etc. Now, outside of this, when we go over here, we can see combining the power of multiple platforms. So Render Network is already integrated within the leading 3D software tools, for example, Cinema 4D. So those that don't know about Cinema 4D, it is a three-dimensional tool for artists to create basically anything. I mean, you can create worlds within Cinema 4D. You could utilize it for, game development, things like that. Same with even Blender. All of this stuff is around 3D modeling and rendering. You also have Houdini, Unreal Engine. This is more around games, movies, TV shows, things like that. And then you also have 20 plus leading DCCs. And again, a lot of this is utilized within movies, television shows, games, anything. And we also have the Render Network also supports GPU rendering workflows for Apple creative professionals using Octane X, enabling Mac Pro, iMac, MacBook, and iPad users on M-series devices to scale advanced GPU rendering workloads to near unlimited CUDA compute power on render. Again, like I said, when we really kind of look at the integrations here with render, if any artist, if anyone that is, creating something, rendering something, if they want to utilize, unmatched power, unmatched efficiencies, they're going to tap into render. So this is very, very important to focus on. And also, my media company, the Web3 Alert, did put out a full report on this back in August, the end of August. And this is where we did outline, the overall support and the backing. I even said here, it goes beyond users of render, though. The overall support and backing says all you need to know, with names like NVIDIA, Apple, IBM, Google, and many more all having an arm in render/Otoy. So as we really kind of look at this, yeah, I mean, render has become a giant in this space. The technology and the efficiencies behind it is exactly what should draw you in. But it's also the adoption, the burn mechanism. I really do believe that, considering how big the use case here for render actually is, and the fact that they actually have a valuable use case that is being utilized within the traditional world and can be utilized right now in the traditional world, it should speak volumes on how big this project could very well become. And I do believe that it is going to be a very big project. I think if you don't have some render in your portfolio, maybe now, considering the fact that it is down considerably since its March high, maybe now is the time to possibly look into it. Wait for a little bit of a pullback if we get it. But I do think that everyone should have a little bit of render in their portfolio for the short, mid, and even the long-term path ahead. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys would definitely leave a like, subscribe to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.